Hi ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my YouTube channel. In today's video, we're gonna try to Dockerize a full stack Mern application using Docker and Nginx. So on the first part, we'll try to Dockerize the application inside our operating system. And then on the second part, we'll try to deploy it inside a Debian virtual machine using Nginx. So without further delay, let's jump into the action. So basically we are having a simple Notes app which is like a lightweight version of Google Keep. So right now I'll try to add a new note and then delete it. So I'll type go to the gym and then press enter and then I'll simply delete it. Alright, so the application is working perfectly and right now we'll move to Visual Studio Code in order to discuss the front end and the backend. Alright, so for the backend we are having server.js file. So in fact the Node.js and Express framework are working together in order to serve our Nodes API. And in fact we are enabling cores and then we are importing all the necessary environment variables from .env file and defining the default values for them in case they are not defined. So we are having the Mongo username, which is admin, the Mongo password, which is admin, the Mongo host, which is localhost, which will be redefined in our Docker Compose file to our MongoDB container name. And then we are having the default Mongo port, which is 27070. And then we are having the MongoDB database name, which is NodesDB. And for the port, we are running this application on port 5000. Alright, after that, we are generating our MongoDB URL and then connecting to the database. And then we are defining the node schema. And then we are defining our basic CRUD API. And then we are using the start function in order to start our server. And we are simply connecting to our port, which is by default equal to 5000. Alright, so basically that's it for our backend. Right now we'll move to the front end. So in fact for the front end we are running React.js inside Next.js framework. So we'll go to page.js. And in fact, we are using use state, use effect, React hooks along with Axios in order to communicate perfectly with the backend. We are importing two environment variables and assigning default value for them in case they are not defined. And simply we are defining three functions which are fetch nodes, add nodes, and delete node in order to retrieve, add, and delete a node. And finally, we are simply integrating our functions inside the HTML. So basically that's all for the code, and right now we'll move to the Dockerization. So in fact for the technique we'll use multi-stage builds or multi-stage Dockerization for smaller image size, faster builds and enhanced security. I'll not write the Docker files from the scratch, but they will be all provided in the link in the description. For our Node.js Docker file, we are mainly having two stages, the build stage and the final stage. For our build stage, we are using the image node 20 Alpine. We are having working directory as slash app. We are copying all the JSON file to our working directory. And at the end, we are simply creating our node models folder using npm clean install dash dash only equal production in order to eliminate the development dependencies. On the final stage, we are also using Node 20 Alpine. We're having working directory as a slash app. We are creating a non-root user app for the sake of security, and we are simply copying our node model from our build stage, and we are copying the rest of the files and folders. We are specifying the user as app, and then at the end we are running Node server JS on port 5000. So basically that's all for the Node.js Docker file, and right now we'll move to the front end. So for our next JS Docker file, we are having also two stages, the builder stage and the final stage. For our builder stage, we are using Node 18 bookworm slim image. We're having up as a working directory. We are copying all the JSON file to our working directory, and then we are generating our node model using run npm clean install. And after that, we are copying the rest of the file and folders. And after that, we are redefining our next public background color environment variable from a light blue to red. And then we are simply running npm run build, which will generate for us .next folder, which will contain all the assets, static files, and folder, which will permit us to run our Next.js application perfectly on the production environment. And then at the end, we are having our final stage in which we will copy the .next folder from our builder stage, and we will also copy the public folder, the node model, and the package.json file. And at the end, we are simply running npm run star, which will activate the next start command, which will permit us to run our application using .next folder. Alright, so basically that's all for the Docker files. Right now we'll move on to Docker Compose file, which will contain all the services needed to run our application. So basically we are mainly having three services: MongoDB, Node.js, and frontend. For the MongoDB, we are using Mongo version 7, and for our container name, it's gonna be equal to MongoDB. We are starting unless we stop it. For the MongoDB username, it's gonna be equal to admin, and the same for the password. And we are specifying the database name to NodesDB, and we are binding /data/db, which is the default MongoDB storage path, to our volume, which is MongoData. We are running the service on port to 27017, which is the default port of MongoDB, and we are including a health check each 10 seconds with a timeout of 5 seconds and with a 5 consecutive retries. And we are basically defining a specific network, which is Mern-net for our application. Moving on to the Node.js, we are building the image using the backend folder, which will contain the Docker file. We're specifying the image to smoothco/mern backend, and for the container name, it's gonna be equal to node app. We are restarting unless we stop it, and we are running the Node.js container internally and externally on port 5000. For the environment, we are redefining MongoHost from localhost to MongoDB, which is the container and the service name of our MongoDB database. And of course, we only want Node.js to run if our MongoDB health check is fine. Alright, so we'll move to the front end. So for the front end service, we are building the image using the front end folder, which is the following. We are specifying the image name to smoothcode/mern frontend, and we are running the container internally and externally on port 3000. We are restarting unless we stop it, and for our network, it's gonna be equal to Mern-net, and for the frontend to run, it's gonna depend on the Node.js service. And of course, we need to define our Mongo data volume, which is necessary for our database, and we need to specify our network, which is Mern-net with the driver as a bridge. So basically that's it for our Docker Compose file, and right now I'll try to make it up and running. So we'll go into the CLI, and inside our main directory I'll simply type docker dash compose and then space up. You can notice, guys, that our images are starting to be created, and the containers right now are running. So we'll type docker ps in order to verify that our containers are running, and as you can see, the frontend is running on port 3000, the backend is running on port 5000, and the database is running on port 27070. So right now we'll move to the browser in order to test the Dockerization. So we'll type localhost colon 3000, and I'll try to add a new node. So I'll type node 1, then I'll press enter. I'll add another node, and I'll simply click on it. Alright, so I will delete the last node that has been added. So basically, as you can see, the Dockerization is working perfectly, and even our background color has been changed to red. So on the next section, I'll try to deploy the Mern application to the cloud using Debian virtual machine and Nginx. So for the production, the first step is to create a Debian virtual machine and allow port 80 on it. I'm using for that sake Google Cloud Platform, but you can guys use whatever cloud provider you want. The most important stuff is to allow port 80. So we'll click on create a virtual machine, and I'll click on create again. I will wait a little bit till my virtual machine is up and running. Alright, my virtual machine is up and running, so I'll click on it, and I'll click on edit and scroll down a little bit till I find firewalls, and right there I will click on allow HTTP traffic, and then I'll click on save. Alright, we have allowed port 80 in our virtual machine, so I'll back and then I'll try to connect, so I'll click on open in the browser window. Alright, so I'll work as a super user, so I'll type sudo su, and then I'll try to install Nginx, so I'll type apt update, and then apt install Nginx. Alright, we can verify that Nginx has been installed, so we'll type system ctl status and Nginx. Alright, so Nginx is up and running, and we can also verify that using our public IP address. So we'll copy it, and I'll simply type http along 2 slashes and then our public IP address. Alright, as you can see, the default welcome page of Nginx has appeared, and right now we can move on to other stuff. So I'll back to my virtual machine, and basically the next installation dependency that we need is Docker. So for Docker, I will follow DigitalOcean guides in order to install it, and I'll see you guys after the installation is complete. Alright, Docker has been installed, so we can verify that. So we'll type system ctl status docker, Alright, Docker is up and running, and you can verify that also typing Docker here. Alright, so we have completed all the installation that we need inside our Debian virtual machine, and right now we'll back to Visual Studio Code in order to prepare the Docker production images. So obviously for our front end, we will not use the development image, but we will need to rebuild a new image with a production configuration inside it. So for that reason, I have specified a new file called dockerfile.prod, in which I have redefined the environment variable next public backend host from localhost to our virtual machine public IP address. So we'll need to copy it. So right there, I will simply type HTTP colon, two slashes, and the IP address. And I have also redefined my background color to green instead of red. So right now in our production, we are expecting to see green as the background color. And basically the other stuff is the same. So right now I'll open the CLI and try to create a new image. So we'll go inside the frontend, and then I'll simply type docker build, and for the specific file it's gonna be equal to dockerfile.prod, and for the name it's gonna be equal to smooth code slash Mern frontend with a tag equal to prod. Alright, and I will basically add the dot, so I am saying to Docker that my dockerfile.prod is existing in my current directory. So I'll press enter in order to create a new image. Alright, our production front-end image has been created, and for the backend we don't actually need to change the Docker file since Node.js environment variable are changeable in the runtime. So we'll back to the main directory, then I will cd into backend, and I'll simply type docker build, and then my image name, which will be smooth code slash Mern backend with a tag equal to prod. Alright, and I'll add the dot to specify the location of my Docker file. So I'll press on enter. Alright, so right now our backend and front-end images are ready to be pushed to Docker Hub repository. But before pushing, make sure guys that you are already logged in. So we'll type Docker login. Alright, login succeeded, and right now I can push my production images. So we'll type Docker push, and then smooth code slash Mern backend, and then colon prod. Right, and it's basically the same for the front. Alright, our front-end and back-end Docker image has been pushed. So right now we can discuss our production Docker Compose file. So I'll click on Docker Compose dashboard.yaml, and it's basically the same as the development Docker Compose file. The main difference is that I have removed the port, so I'm not publishing MongoDB port. And of course, for Node.js, we are using smooth code slash Mern backend colon broad image. And you can also notice, guys, that inside our Node.js and the front-end service that I have removed the build configuration since our images has already been created and pushed to our Docker Hub repository. Alright, so right now all I need to do is to copy my Docker Compose dashboard instructions. So I'll click on Ctrl A and then Ctrl C, and I'll move to my virtual machine. So right there I will type nano, then Docker Compose, then .yaml, and I'll press enter. And I'll basically copy my new configuration using Ctrl Shift and V. Alright, so everything seems fine, so we'll press on Ctrl S, then Ctrl X to exit. And right now I am capable of activating my Docker Compose services in a detached mode. So we'll type Docker space compose, then up, then space dash T, and I'll press enter. You can notice, guys, that our virtual machine is starting to pull our images, and hopefully after a few seconds all our container will be running perfectly. Alright, all our volumes, network and container have been created. So right now we'll type docker ps to see the running containers. Alright, so the front end is running internally and externally on port 3000, and the backend is running on port 5000. So we'll use curl in order to test them. So we'll type curl http colon two slashes, then local host colon 5000, and then slash API slash nodes, and I'll press enter. And as you can see, it has returned an empty array, which is the expected return type. So I will also test the front end. So I will replace 5000 with 3000, and I'll press enter. Alright, it seems to be okay. So I will type again docker ps, and all we need to do right now is to reverse proxy our front end running on localhost 3000 to our virtual machine public IP address default welcome page, and to also reverse proxy the backend running on localhost 5000 to our virtual machine public IP address slash API. So for that reason, I will nano into the default Nginx configurations. So I'll type nano slash etc slash Nginx slash site available slash default, and I'll press enter. And basically I'll remove all the default configuration using Ctrl K, and instead of that I will use my custom configuration, which will be inside the deployment folder. So I'll basically copy all of this using Ctrl A, Ctrl C. Then I will back to my virtual machine and I'll press Ctrl Shift V. Alright, so as you can see, guys, for the location slash, I am redirecting it to http localhost colon 3000, And for the location slash API, I'm redirecting it to HTTP localhost colon 5000. So I'll press Ctrl S and then Ctrl X to exit. Then I'll simply type nginx -t in order to test the new configuration. Alright, the test is successful. So right now all I need to do is to restart nginx. So I'll type system ctl restart and then nginx. Alright, the Nginx has been restarted successfully, so right now we'll back to the browser to test our deployment. So I'll refresh this page and I'll add a new node and I'll click on enter and I'll add another node, so I'll type pay bills and I'll click on add and I'll simply try to delete any node, so I'll delete pay bills, so I'll click on this delete button. Alright guys, our deployment is working perfectly. We have not yet finished it. I will back to our Docker Compose file inside our Debian virtual machine. So we'll nano into my Docker Compose file. And I'll basically remove the port from both the Node.js and the Next.js frontend. So we'll go right there and remove this part. And I'll do the same for the frontend. Alright, I'll press Ctrl S and then Ctrl X and I'll need to shut down the previous container, so we'll type Docker compose down. Alright, and right now I'll try to run the new Docker compose file in which I have removed the published ports. So I will type Docker compose up -t and I'll press enter. Alright, so our containers are running, so we can see them on Docker PS. So as you can see guys, there are no internal and external port for both the front end and the backend. So right now we are not capable to curl into our backend using HTTP localhost colon /API. So we'll try doing that. So I'll type curl HTTP colon two slashes local host colon 5000 slash API slash nodes, and as expected it's failed to connect to localhost port 5000 after 0 millisecond. So the new solution will be to Docker inspect our node app. So we'll type node app and I'll simply copy this IP address, and using this IP address I can simply curl to my node app. So we'll type curl http colon two slashes, then the IP address, and then colon 5000 slash API slash nodes, and I'll press enter. Alright guys, we have got our saved node, and we will basically do the same for the front end. So we'll type docker ps and I'll copy the front end container name and I'll simply type docker inspect and then Ctrl Shift V for my container name. Alright, and I'll simply copy this IP address So right now all I need to do is to change the default configuration of Nginx. So we'll type nano slash etc slash Nginx slash site available slash default. Alright, and I'll basically scroll down to proxy path and I'll delete localhost and I'll press Ctrl Shift V in order to paste the front-end IP address. Alright, so I'll press Ctrl S and then Ctrl X and I'll do the same for the backend. So I'll type Docker inspect, then node up. I will copy the IP address and I'll nano again into the Nginx configuration file and I'll simply replace localhost with the backend IP address colon 5000. Alright, so I'll press Ctrl S and Ctrl X. I'll clear the terminal and then I'll type again nginx -t in order to test the new configuration. Alright, the configuration is successful, so I'll simply restart Nginx. Alright, Nginx has been restarted, so I'll try to refresh our IP address and I'll add a new node. And as you can see, guys, the new node has been added, and we can obviously also delete any node, so I'll press delete. So basically, not publishing the backend and the front-end port adds a huge security layer for our Debian virtual machine and make it less vulnerable for port exploitation. So guys, that's all for this video. So if you have enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe to the channel, and see you guys soon.